Just over a year ago, I finished recording the audio version of the Illustrator's Guide. Just over a week ago, somebody told me that I'd accidentally uploaded Chapter 5 instead of Chapter 7, and for a whole year, people have been listening to the audiobook without Chapter 7 in it and probably wondering what the hell was going on. So today, I'm going to read Chapter 7 of my book, Get Feedback on Your Work. Thank you to whoever it was that sent anonymous feedback through Audible to tell me that I'd messed it up. If you hadn't, I probably never would have known. Sometimes you need other people to tell you what mistakes you're making because you might not be able to see them on your own. Anyway, I fixed it now, so if you do own the audiobook, you can delete it from your Audible library and re-download it and it'll all be fixed. If you don't have the audiobook or the real book, there's a link in the description and you can consider this a free sample. Of all the stages of writing and self-publishing my book, recording the audio version was the hardest part by a long way. Turns out reading out loud is really difficult for me. Then editing the damn thing and listening to my own voice over and over again was a bizarre experience. But the content is good, so enjoy Chapter 7 of the Illustrator's Guide, Get Feedback on Your Work. Why an outside perspective is important. While you're working on a project with a client, you'll get feedback on your progress. A good client will hire you for your expertise and unique perspective, but they'll still want to check in to make sure that what you're making aligns with their goals for the project. There's an element of give and take with this process. You have your ideas and they have theirs, but the input of a good art director can make an illustrator's work better. The roles of art director and artist are designed to work together. Receiving and responding to feedback is part of the job. And as we've seen, this is also essential when developing your portfolio before you found your first client. When trying out styles and putting a portfolio together, as an illustrator, you'll often work alone behind closed doors, trying to get it to a stage that you're happy with. But often we can't see our own work objectively. We're not necessarily the best judge of our own strengths and weaknesses. If you seek out the opinion of someone in the industry, you can get a fresh pair of eyes on your work. They can see what you can't. An outsider to your creative process doesn't see all the effort and context that affects your judgment. They only see the finished product. But this is valuable because that viewpoint helps us see our work in a way that a client would. We can get a more objective view that isn't tangled up with an emotionally charged creative process. When to get feedback. Without an outside perspective on our work, we could try something out, enjoy it, feel good about the result, and decide to fill our portfolio with similar work over 4 or 5 months. If our judgment of that first experiment was biased, we risk producing work that isn't viable because the illustrations we like and feel the proudest of might not be commercially attractive. Meanwhile, the project we hated working on could be the most commercially valuable illustration in our portfolio. We might be lucky, but it's also possible that we could have spent months going in the wrong direction. Getting feedback early and often means we can discover potential problems with the work before we've poured too much time and energy into it. We can change course quickly and easily if we need to do so. This is a great way to practice not being too precious about your work too. You may have to throw a lot out, but what remains will be your best. It takes effort to do it this way and find people willing to offer their help, but you'll improve faster, find out what your audience responds to, and have a better portfolio as a result. Sadly, I've seen a lot of aspiring illustrators who've plugged away at the same style for years with no significant interest from clients. They're so emotionally invested in it that it's unthinkable to change course now. They might be just around the corner from a big break, but they might spend another 3 years not making any headway at all. If a style isn't working, it's far better to find out quickly. You could go it alone and learn through trial and error, or develop through feedback. One way is slow and painful, but while the other may sting at times, it'll be a lot quicker. As mentioned previously, part of the job is accepting critique and feedback. For a commissioned illustration, the client has the right to give their opinion on what we've made, if they're paying us to make it. Getting used to responding to feedback early during the portfolio development stage means being able to practice before the stakes are higher. And here's an exercise. Trial your style. Before committing to making a whole portfolio of work in a new style, try testing out some options to get quick feedback. Making 20 illustrations takes a long time, but you don't need a whole portfolio of work to ask for feedback. Number 1, choose a few illustration styles you like. Number 2, make 2 or 3 examples in each style. Number 3, share them with other creatives, colleagues, or friends and ask for their honest opinions. Number 4, see what kind of comments you get back and adjust your course for the next set. Number 5, repeat as needed. If you repeat this process for a few months, at the end of it you'll have come up with a lot of different ideas, develop some new skills, and more importantly, you'll be a lot more confident that your style is something the market wants to pay for. It's been validated by multiple people and you've refined it into its best form. Your minimum viable portfolio. Software companies used to make their products behind closed doors and release them into the world, hoping for the best. Now they release a minimum viable product, MVP, for beta testing before official release. A select number of users can try out the software, find its faults, offer feedback, and help improve the product. The company can find out what's not working early and change course if necessary. It might require small adjustments or huge fundamental changes. Either way, they find out early and can make improvements without unnecessary wasted time. You can use the same approach with your portfolio. What does your minimum viable portfolio look like? What's the quickest way for you to create a good enough portfolio to send to clients? And what would you rather learn sooner than later? Where to get feedback. It's possible to get feedback on our work from anyone, but some people will be more useful than others in helping to improve it. Friends and family. Our loved ones might be well-meaning, but they're unlikely to be objective or experienced enough to give really good commercial feedback, unless they happen to be industry professionals themselves. Our family's, friends, or partners' feedback on our work isn't especially valuable because naturally they care more about making us happy than giving us the truth. They simply might not know enough about illustration to understand how to help us. Classmates and peers. Your peers may have limited commercial experience if they're still figuring things out for themselves, but they'll definitely know things you don't. They all have different skills and interests within the subject and can offer at least a fresh pair of eyes. They could make a suggestion that might not have occurred to you. Teachers. Teachers are a great source of feedback if you're still studying. Even if they don't have much commercial experience themselves, their job is to help you develop, and they're good at it. Be sure to make the most of your teachers because you won't have access to them forever. Professional illustrators. Other illustrators are a great option. They're already in it and making money from their work, so they must be doing something right. You don't need to go for the most famous and popular illustrators to discover something useful. Agents. Agents can be a good source of advice. A request for feedback might be a welcome change to all the applications they receive. More on this in chapter 15. Ooh, teaser. Industry professionals. There are several independent professionals in the industry who can review your portfolio, usually for a fee as they charge for their expertise. The Association of Illustrators. The AOI has consultants who can review your portfolio, again for a fee. And art directors. Art directors might be the hardest to pin down, but they're the ones you're ultimately hoping to impress, so their input will be really valuable. Get knowledgeable feedback. The main thing is to get feedback from people who know what they're talking about. That doesn't necessarily mean going for the most experienced or successful ones in the industry either. The super famous and popular illustrators get a lot of requests for this kind of thing, and their time is limited. You might find it hard to get a response from professionals very high up the ladder, but you can gain a lot from someone who is just a few years ahead of you. Advice from a very experienced and successful illustrator is valuable in many ways, but it might be 10 or 15 years since they were at your current stage. Even with the best of intentions, the way they got their big break or found their first clients probably won't be the same way you should do it. That's if they can even remember how they did it. A newer illustrator with a few years of experience will be able to give you relevant advice that you can apply to your work because it's fresh in their mind. Not all advice is good advice. Having said that, not all of the advice you might get on your work will prove to be useful. Your teachers, agents, or even my advice isn't perfect because it's our opinion. But some people's advice is more valuable than others. Unfortunately, even within our industry, not everyone has developed the skill of giving constructive feedback. An overwhelmingly positive review might mean your work is perfect and you have nothing left to learn, or it could be that the reviewer is unsure what the best course of action should be for your work. They may hold back on some of the more difficult feedback they want to give you to save your feelings. It's not easy to deconstruct a stranger's portfolio and tell them what direction they should go in based solely on a short meeting. People worry about steering us in the wrong direction and hurting our feelings. It's a lot easier to be positive, ignore the problems, and have both parties leave the interaction feeling good about themselves. But that doesn't help anybody. The opinion of an industry professional with years of experience should be considered more carefully than that of someone who doesn't know the industry. But whatever feedback you receive, keep in mind that they are just opinions. With creative work, there is no right or wrong answer. For example, if an experienced art director tells you your style won't work, it simply might be because they've never seen it work before. They may be right or wrong. It's based on their unique experience. Ask yourself whether the experience is valuable to you. As someone who gives a lot of general advice to illustrators online, I can tell you that there is no substitute for direct personal feedback. There's plenty of broad advice out there to read, listen to, and watch. Most of it will be useful for someone, but it won't all be useful to you, as general pointers for all illustrators aren't necessarily going to be specific enough for your work. Every artist works differently, with different goals. Personalized feedback on your work is far more helpful to your development. Here's another exercise: evaluating feedback. Try asking 10 industry professionals for feedback on your work and see what comes back. You won't get 10 completely different answers. Overlapping themes and trends will appear. If 7 or more out of the 10 tell you the same thing, you should listen to it. If 5 people say one thing and 5 people say the opposite, wait and see. And if 1 out of the 10 gives you a piece of advice you've never heard before, it's not a priority. The more feedback, the better. Asking 1 industry professional is good, but asking 10 is better. No matter how experienced a person might be in the industry, they still have their own biases, tastes, and opinions. That 1 outlier may be more insightful than the other 9 people you've spoken to, but they also may be giving you a personal opinion that ultimately isn't going to be useful for you. 1 piece of advice from 1 person may or may not be helpful. You won't know if you don't try it, but that's a risky all-or-nothing strategy. If you receive the same suggestion from a number of experienced people, it's a safe bet to prioritize that change. Responding to feedback. When we've found people who can give us feedback and they've made an effort to look at our work and consider it, we then have a responsibility to ourselves and to them to take action. The first thing is to thank the reviewer for their time. People tend to not be so willing to help in the future if they aren't acknowledged, so it's important to extend that courtesy. Then you have options with what to do with the feedback. You can do exactly what the person has said, hoping that they're right. You can choose to ignore their feedback, hoping that they're wrong. Or you can take what you think might be useful to you and put the rest aside. If an industry professional whose opinion we value has shared their insight and experience, we have to be willing to seriously consider their notes and try out their suggestions, even if it's not immediately obvious how it will help. If we're not open to giving it a go, their time has been wasted, and so has ours. If we think the reviewer is wrong, we can always prove it by trying out what they've suggested to see if it works. We'll never know if their feedback could have helped if we don't have a go. But digging our heels in, not taking any action, and closing ourselves off to the possibility that they could be right leaves us in the same position we were right at the start, still in need of advice. Dealing with difficult feedback. We ask for feedback because we want to improve, but it's also true that we might not like some of the feedback we get. Receiving praise can boost our motivation, but we're not getting much else out of the interaction. Reassurance and a pat on the back doesn't help us improve or give us any clues on what to do next. For example, I don't relish the idea of receiving negative feedback on my work, but I find it far more helpful if someone can tell me what I've missed or where I'm going wrong, because I can use it to inform whatever I do next. Nasty, unhelpful, negative comments can be safely ignored because they're not coming from a good place, but constructive, tough feedback from a trusted source can still cut like a knife. It can be hard to deal with difficult suggestions when we've worked hard and tried our best. Unfortunately, I recommend that you actively seek them out, because if you've only received good feedback on your work, you probably haven't shown it to enough people. The parts we don't want to hear, the hard parts, the things that will take a long time to fix or need fundamental changes, may be the feedback that makes the most significant difference to our career. Changing the small, easy, and quick details isn't going to make a difference if there are larger issues to address. If you find yourself in this position, take a breath, get a second opinion, then focus on the next step in the right direction, however small that might be. If you decide to start your portfolio over again, instead of seeing it as a huge mountain of a task, just break it down into manageable steps and concentrate on the next action. Start with the smallest possible improvement you can make today and do the same tomorrow until you build up momentum again. How to handle negative feedback. If you receive a particularly harsh review of your work, first consider the source. Does this person want you to succeed? Do they have experience to give weight to their comments? And do they have a track record of helping other illustrators? If the answer is no, then their feedback isn't worth much. But if they're a credible source of industry experience, even though you may initially feel disheartened, they are doing you a favor. A harsh review by someone who knows the industry well might mean you have to start your portfolio over, but it could save you years of soul-crushing effort trying to sell your style to a market that isn't interested. Don't take it personally. Once the creative process is done, it's important to practice detaching ourselves from our work. When an illustration is completed, our baby has to leave our tender loving care and stand on its own 2 feet. It becomes its own thing, quite separate from us, the artist. It may thrive or perish once we let it go. Putting some emotional distance between ourselves and our work saves us from unnecessary turmoil. We aren't our work, and negative feedback on that isn't a reflection on us as a person, but it is a chance to discover something useful for the next illustration we make. Stoically choosing not to feel upset by negative feedback is easier said than done, but we can suffer if we interpret difficult feedback as an attack. Instead, if we can see it for what it is, an attempt by someone to help us by generously sharing their professional opinion, we can be enriched rather than shaken by the experience. As we've seen, if we take critique personally over time, we'll close ourselves off to situations where we might be exposed to it. We won't be able to benefit from useful, constructive observations. Asking for directions. If you're driving through a country village looking for a place, you could ask a local for directions. They know the area, they've probably lived there for years. If they tell you that you've taken a wrong turn, would you be offended? You might be frustrated that you've been driving in the wrong direction for a few miles, but they've given you useful information based on their knowledge and experience. However, they can't give you good directions if you don't know where you want to go, and even if you do, they might genuinely want to help but still give you faulty information. You won't know until you try. Choose to trust in people's experience, even if there's a risk of it occasionally not working out. Reflect on your own performance. What's also true is that we can be our own worst critic or biggest fan depending on what mood we're in. Still, evaluating the quality of our own work accurately is an essential skill to develop. It won't always be possible to get outside feedback, so we need to be able to see the shortcomings of our own work and the areas that we need to work on to improve it. Equally, it's important to recognize and take note of what we've done well so we can do it again next time. While a healthy boost to our self-confidence is good, it's worth being mindful that too much can risk developing an unrealistic view of our skills. With every project you complete, practice giving yourself a full and honest critique. Exercise. Evaluate your work. When you've completed a project, ask yourself, what did I do well? What could I have done better? What mistakes did I make? What did I learn? How could I have completed this more efficiently? And what can I improve on next time? Some of these questions might be painful for the ego, but crucial for real development. Seeing the flaws in other illustrators' work is easy. Seeing our own is much more difficult, partly because we don't want to see them. In the same way that you might feel embarrassed about the quality of your work a year ago, try to find a way to view it with a little distance, as if you didn't create it. Detach and assess it on its merits, rather than your experience of producing it. Viewing our own work objectively can be hard, which is why seeking outside feedback is so essential. But practicing honest self-reflection means you'll be able to see your work with all its strengths and weaknesses more clearly. Here's another thing to bear in mind. While feedback is important, don't rely on external validation to keep you motivated, because it's often inconsistent and unreliable. What's more helpful is being able to say to yourself, the illustration I made and shared today is better than the illustration I shared last week. That means I'm getting better. Then you move on to the next one. Exercise. Boost your mindset. Not every day can be full of productive and meaningful work, but when there have been too many so-so days in a row, it helps to spend 5 minutes evaluating your mindset towards whatever you're working on. This short exercise helps you identify any barriers to doing your best work. Being mindful and deliberate about mindset helps you improve the next day's work and get back on track. Here are some questions to think about. Did I approach my work with enthusiasm and positivity? Was it a real grind to get anything done? Why? What were the reasons? Could I do anything differently? If I'm not enjoying a task, how can I make it more fun or challenging? So, just to recap, outside feedback helps us see our work more objectively. Get feedback from lots of people and pay attention to recurring comments rather than individual ones. Be willing to try out suggestions from professionals, even if it isn't obvious how they will help. And practice detaching yourself from your creations. Feedback on an illustration isn't judgment on you as a person. And regularly reflect on what you've done well and what you could improve. And there you go. That's chapter 7 of the Illustrator's Guide. And if you like that one, there's 15 more just like it in the book. See you next time.